I have here, Madam Speaker, a chart. Unfortunately, the technology here is not working. We tried to get it working, but I understand that we do not have any signal. So that is why we had to resort to the PowerPoint presentation. I have here, Madam Speaker, a chart of Antigua and Barbuda's Consumer Price Index from 1997 to 2005. And in this chart, Madam Speaker, it can be seen that barring 2 years, 1998 and 2002, Madam Speaker, inflation under the Antigua Labour Party government stood at under 2%. And we knew what happened in 1998. We knew that Antigua and Barbuda was struck by Hurricane Georges. And we knew what happened, Madam Speaker, in 2001. We had the atrocities of 9/11, and certainly there was a global recession in 2002, and that obviously would have impacted on rates of inflation. So when you look at this chart, Madam Speaker, you would see that the Antigua Labour Party government would have outperformed the UPP government in terms of rates of inflation. In fact, the rate of inflation in terms of the percentage change, Madam Speaker, was as low as 0.25% in 1997. Madam Speaker, the next chart demonstrates that inflation in Antigua and Barbuda has been far more stable than other OECS countries. In fact, we have seen here that in the case of St. Kitts and Nevis, that in 2007, inflation rates were as high as 8.5%. And you can see from the red line, which is the Antigua and Barbuda graph, Madam Speaker, that the variability is far less than the other countries. In fact, we can see here that inflation stabilized at about 1.9% as of 2003 under the Antigua Labour Party government and continued under the UPP. So the point I'm making here, Madam Speaker, is that inflation was certainly stable under the Antigua Labour Party and certainly far lower than other countries within the OECS region. And even compared to what is taking place today with inflation, Madam Speaker, you have a situation in which the Antigua Labour Party would have certainly outperformed the UPP government. Now, Madam Speaker, the member for St. John's Rural East had a number of selected items, food items, in which he tried to argue that there has been a reduction in inflation. Now, Madam Speaker, by his own admission in the budget statement on page 36, Madam Speaker, the member has indicated that Antigua and Barbuda's food prices increased by 0.8% in 2006. So by his own admission, Madam Speaker, he has indicated in the budget statement that food prices in this country increased by approximately 1%. But yet still, Madam Speaker, he came with the contradictory argument to prove that prices were low. Now, Madam Speaker, in the very budget, he also indicated that inflation was 2.5% in 2006. And that in itself, Madam Speaker, would have indicated that there has been an increase in prices. But yet again, Madam Speaker, the honourable member comes back and tries to deceive the public by giving them the impression that there has been no increase in prices, or that to the contrary, that food prices have been lowered. Madam Speaker, I find that that was an extremely disingenuous piece of politics, because at the end of the day, there has been an increase in prices. There's no doubt about that. Even in his statement, Madam Speaker, the member for Rural East has acknowledged that prices, both food and non-food prices, have increased. So that he was practically wasting his time identifying a number of what I call inferior foods, Madam Speaker, to prove that prices for those foods have actually fallen. And it begs the question as to whether or not, Madam Speaker, the honourable member is seeking to increase demand for those inferior foods. And especially considering that our people, a number of our people, Madam Speaker, suffer from diabetes and certainly from blood pressure, high blood pressure. Now, Madam Speaker, when the member seeks to increase demand for these inferior foods, things like back and neck, Madam Speaker, back and neck has virtually little nutritional value, Madam Speaker.